Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I I hope that you are poised to have a good day today. I wanted to come on this morning and just talk to you about some of the events that are going on. I haven't had a chance to broadcast in the last 2 weeks. I've been extremely busy. There are a lot of currents raging. There are a lot of sensitive political issues going on. And so I decided to just sort of step back for a moment until things clarify themselves. But let it suffice to say that I am constantly watching, constantly observing what goes on in American politics, whether that's at the federal level or that's at the citywide level. When I say citywide, in this case, New York City, local politics are the politics that I cover and observe most keenly. I think New York City is in a particular potential crisis. I think the black community is at a very important juncture. And I really didn't come on today to talk about New York City politics. I'll be doing a more detailed assessment of the mayor's race a little later on this week, maybe into the weekend. But I do want to say that since I last talked with you, a number of African American leaders, still a few preachers, not many, have come out for Cuomo, and that's to be expected. Cuomo is a known entity. The name goes, the name recognition goes back to his father, Mario Cuomo, who was the governor of the state of New York, and Andrew Cuomo was the governor of the state of New York. He resigned, following a sexual harassment allegations, or a series of allegations. But the name is well known. He named the bridge, used to be the Tappan Zee Bridge, going from Westchester County to Rockland County, after his father, Mario. And so now the name, of course, is known. His brother is a well-known journalist. I think he had to leave one of the major stations because of some sort of unsavory reporting or violating journalistic ethics. So let me just say about this, I stand with Mayor Eric Adams, and I will continue to stand with the mayor until the end. I have not seen anything that would make me feel embarrassed or disappointed to stand with him. I think he's done a very good job in light of the fact that the city was run into the ground, if you will, for 8 years under de Blasio and under left-wing policies. And of course, he has to negotiate with the extreme left-wing city council. So I'm going to stand with him. And I don't think there's any reason for us not to. Now, I will say that, there are people who are supporting Adrian Adams. There are people who are, sure, Caleb, if you want to give a $500 donation, be my guest. There are people who are going to support many candidates, and reasonable people can disagree. And I will have friends, I'm sure, that support other candidates. I think ultimately what my prediction is that of the moderate candidates, that's Adrian Adams, Cuomo, and of course the mayor. I think the mayor has the best chance of winning. Cuomo is badly damaged with the sexual harassment scandals. He's badly damaged with the nursing home death scandal. Adrian Adams does not have the name recognition. And so I thought, you know, the moderate wing of the Democratic Party probably did itself a great disservice by putting two formidable moderate candidates in the race. And I hope they have not created a situation where, with ranked choice voting, it makes it more possible for a left wing candidate to win the city, the mayoral election. And because if that happens, you would essentially be putting an ideologue, a left-wing ideologue, in the in Gracie Mansion with a city council that's dominated by left-wing ideologues. And so that's problematic, and I hope that will not take place. I hope it will not, but we will watch and see. The New York City mayor's race is heating up. And again, I support Mayor Adams. But I wanted to come on today to warn you of something that I see taking place in the Democratic Party. Richard Muirhead says, no donations at this time, no thanks. Well, that's fine. I didn't wake up in the morning to get on your podcast, so if you don't want to donate, that's fine. I didn't ask you for a donation. So I don't know what the purpose of that statement was, but hey, to each his own. But I wanted to talk today to Democrats. I am a registered Democrat. I'm still a Democrat, and registered New York Democrat. And but I'm one of those Democrats that's not afraid to say to the party, "You're crazy. You lost your mind. You're going to lose the American people. You're going to lose the races. You're going to lose because you have lost sight of what the majority everyday people need and want, and that's problematic." The Democrats nationally have a 29% approval rating by the American people. And I mean, the Republicans only have 36% approval rating, so don't get excited. But consistently, the Democrats keep sort of shooting themselves in the foot at the national level, at the local level. I mean, here we have an incumbent mayor, and of course he was charged with crimes, but hey, many politicians have been charged. And a charge is merely an accusation. In lieu of a conviction, in lieu of a smoking gun, in lieu of a photograph with him with money or a videotape, I mean, it was politics. And yet we are having a meltdown over that, which will probably put a leftist in office if the mayor cannot prevail. And then at the national level, the Democrats prioritized issues that the majority of Americans do not agree with. And they did that for 4 years under Biden. They literally defended and encouraged millions of illegal immigrants to come into the country, made it possible through creating an asylum scheme, I would call it, creating an app, and literally encouraging people to come from all over the world to make dubious asylum claims. And you and I both know, all of us know, that the majority of the people coming for these asylum claims, number one, their cases were denied. But number two, we know that most of these people were coming as economic refugees. I mean, let's just face it. And I am not against people desiring a better life. And yes, I'm blessed to have been born in America. That's nothing I did. Now, my ancestors suffered for it. So I'll have no one lecture me about the privilege of being born as an American, because my ancestors were enslaved for 310 years. So I will not be lectured about that. But be that as it may, I was blessed to be born in America. And Yeah. Uh, Corona Extra says, 715 says, weren't they also trying to start playing for people's gender transition? Yeah. I mean, yeah, the gender issue was another very misguided policy. I mean, immigration, gender, these are just misguided policies. You know, at the end of the day, people were afraid for a while to say they did not think that men should be in women's bathrooms. I was not. I've always said that. My own alma mater, the University of Pennsylvania, Leah Thomas, who was Will Thomas, was maybe the 300th best swimmer in the NCAA as a man, transitioned and became the best swimmer in America on the women's team. And the women at the University of Pennsylvania, we're finding out now, we're afraid to speak out. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. You know, the Trump administration is challenging the courts. They're doing things that are not normative, things that we've never seen a president do. I have asserted, and I believe that's because Donald Trump is not a traditional politician. I think it would be wrong to say he's not a skilled politician. And it's even stupid, and I hear many Democrats say this, that Trump is an idiot. Trump is stupid. I mean, that's just foolish. That, and that inability to reason, to think, the inability on the part of Democrats to assess and analyze issues from an intelligent and analytical perspective without the emotional baggage. Clearly, he's a skilled politician. Clearly, he's not stupid. In fact, one would have to say he's very bright. Completely unorthodox. And I do believe some of that is because he has not been a student of politics all of his life. And I would also say that the American people have invested a lot in the art and theater of politics. And so we have politicians in the past that have stood before us, ramrod straight, jutting, square jaws, and with their hand over their heart. And we've bought into the myth of political leaders. We've bought into the myth of political leaders. He's much more of a businessman and a very good one at that. It helps with politics, but yeah, his methods are quite different from what, yes, because what he does is he defies what we're accustomed to. You know, you think about it. Even in Europe and Asia and Africa, everyone knows politicians have mistresses. And yet, in 2025 in America, we continue to make it a priority and a value that our politicians stand in front of us with their wife, holding hands, portraying to us that these are solid marriages, that these are dedicated men who don't have mistresses. And the average American would have a complete meltdown if they found out that the president they love had a mistress. And yet we know through history, Jack Kennedy screwed everything that wasn't nailed down in the White House. We know from history, Lyndon Johnson did the same thing. We know from history now, and what we should have common sense to know, I mean, in Europe and Asia and Africa, nobody would ever point out that a premier, a king, a strong man, a leader has a mistress and be in shock. And yet in America, we still hold to those conventions. I get it. I'm not opposed to that. I mean, I think that's important. But you also have to use common sense. And of course, we expect our politicians to be statesmen, and Trump doesn't often carry himself as a statesman. I mean, you have to remember, this man, he was never elected.
Estimated time in traffic, 12 minutes.
Okay. He was never elected to the city council, state legislature. He was never even a school board superintendent or a school board president. His first office was president, and so clearly he doesn't place a lot of emphasis or even value on the pageantry of the office. He is unorthodox, so I will concede that, and I understand how that is unsettling to people. I understand how that's problematic for most people, and that's why Trump disturbs people so much. But I would also argue that even in analyzing him, you have to understand in many ways he's crazy like a fox. He has a methodology. And what I'm afraid of with the Democratic Party is that they are responding without thinking, responding emotionally, responding and not analyzing, and continuing to double down on stupid. Let me give you a prime example of this. There is a case that is winding its way through the courts as we speak, where the Trump administration recently deported members of the Trende Aragua gang from Venezuela. It's a vicious gang. They came to America during the Biden open policy period, and they wreaked havoc from coast to coast, from Colorado to New York. They killed a young man up in the Bronx several years ago. This is a vicious gang, and the Trump administration, since being in office, has rounded many of them up, and they got them on a plane, and they deported them. Of course, there was a challenge to that, and a judge issued a ruling, a lower court judge issued a ruling that they had to stop. That's winding its way through the courts right now. They were in court yesterday, they were in court over the weekend, and we don't know how that's going to act out. But I was in conversations with people yesterday, and these are Democrats, and they were hysterical. Trump is violating the Constitution. Trump is doing things that have never been done before. Trump is there, and it was just a hysterical sort of ranting and raving, and it was completely devoid of facts. Listen, yes, Trump is pushing the limits of presidential power. He's testing. What are the limits? The president has enormous power. A United States president has enormous power, okay? Presidents have... Can you hear me now? Okay. Let me know if you can hear me. All right. So, though many of the things he's doing are unorthodox, and we haven't seen them before, it doesn't mean that they're illegal. And I think that's what the Democrats need to be looking at instead of doubling down on stupid. Like, the Democrats tried the whole existential threat, our democracy is at stake. Let me know if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up or wave or put something in the comment section if you can hear me. I should have put on do not disturb. That's what I have to remember to do when I'm using this. My son helps me out with this. I assume you can still hear me. All right, maybe you can. I see a couple of people here. Please let me know. Put something in the comment section if you can hear me before I proceed. Let me proceed, but I want to know that you can hear me. Yeah, so, okay. All right. Can you hear me? All right, great. So, good morning, Greg McCree and others. So, again, these folks were hysterical yesterday. Trump doing it, he breaking the law. The judge. Let me just say to people who, when I take this position in the knee-jerk fashion, people say, well, you're a Trump supporter. I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm not an idiot, and I'm not hysterical. And I understand that just because you get upset about something, or you bang your head up against the wall, you wake up every day and you look at Trump in the mirror and say, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. That irrational response is not going to make any difference. And so I'm trying to help you to understand what he's doing so that we can understand. All right. So the first thing he's doing is testing the limits of power. All right. The president has enormous power. He invoked an old sort of World War II powers, the Alien Enemy Act. And he's arguing that Tren de Aragua have invaded our country, and he's enacting, or he set in motion or utilized, called upon this sort of arcane presidential power. Now, he did that. The judges will decide, it's in court, whether or not he is operating within the law. Now, there is some controversy as to whether or not he disobeyed, or his administration disobeyed the judge's order, or whether or not the order, by the time it got to the Trump administration, the planes had taken off. Apparently, a lower court judge said, stop the planes. And if they're in the air, bring it back. Now, this is a Democratic judge. So I understand what's going on here. The judge is saying, okay, what you did was illegal. Trump's administration is saying we're within our rights to do that. Some would say, well, why would a Democratic judge argue to bring Tren de Aragua killers, drug dealers, really murderers and terrorists? Why would a judge say bring them back to the United States? I mean, if they're gone, they got out, good riddance. But the rule of law is important. I will concede that. The rule of law is important. But what people have to understand is that this is not like being at the Yankees game where you're cheering, or the Knicks game where you're excited and you hope your team wins. What will determine whether this is legal or not are the courts. And that's one of the reasons why we don't have to be so hysterical. And we need to get off this our democracy is at stake argument. Because it isn't. Because all over the map, Trump is making moves, federal courts, federal judges are responding, and these things will ultimately work their way to the Supreme Court. So our system of checks and balances is holding well. The president has enormous power, but not absolute. We have 3 co-equal branches. I mean, unfortunately, the legislative branch is so bifurcated. There's so much partisanship that the Congress can't pass anything. Ironically, the only thing Congress can seem to unite on is Israel, which I think is very unfortunate for the American people. Like, they can't get together on anything for us, okay? And you know, they can't even get together for Ukraine. So Congress, the legislative branch is basically broken. Most presidents have done things through executive orders. I mean, that's how Obama got Obamacare. That's how we got Obamacare, through executive orders. That's how Biden created the last wave of immigrants, through executive orders. Trump, first day, he signed a plethora of executive orders. And so the presidential branch or the executive branch is active and working. The legislative branch is deadlocked, and the courts are increasingly politicized. And that's estimated time and traffic. That's on both sides. The Democratic appointed judges, generally speaking, are in opposition to moves the Trump administration is making. And when Obama was in office, it was largely the conservative judges or the Republican appointed judges that challenged and were a check on some of the things that he did through executive fiat. But what I'm saying to you, black folks, is stop being so irrational. Take the emotion. Just take a deep breath. Because politics doesn't work like, your passions don't matter in politics. And if you're so passionate that you don't understand what's going on and you mislead people, that's how Trump keeps winning. I remember when I was growing up, and if you got into a fight with a guy and you were just angry, you were just filled with rage. I remember the girls when we were growing up, when they would fight, they just dropped their head and start. I mean, it was actually comical to me. But there were a lot of guys that fought from an emotional standpoint. And then, a boxer, someone who can fight, it's an art. Pugilism is an art. You have to be careful. You have to be alert. You have to capitalize off the mistakes of your opponent. And only if you approach a fight from a strategic perspective, you have to set traps. You have to feint right and go left. Only when you do that can you actually prevail. But what Democrats are doing, it's emotionalism, it's insanity. And the sad thing about it is that it's infectious. And that's the last thing I want to talk about this morning. Those of you who study American history and global history, you need to study the American Revolution and the French Revolution. You need to study those two revolutions. Those were two very important revolutions that took place in the 1700s, late 1700s, the American Revolution first, and the French Revolution. And the American Revolution was an important revolution. It was a revolution against the British, the strongest empire in the world. People got together for religious freedom. People said that they wanted to get away from the tyranny of the crown, which was the King of England, and the cross, which was the Church of England, and the Catholic Church of Europe, that were very much married to the crown. The cross and the crown were married. There was very little freedom in those monarchies, and people lived under the church in an oppressive way. And so the Pilgrims and the Puritans, people said they wanted to come to America, have freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom of association. And that was sort of the basis of the American expansion. Now, they didn't care about the natives that were there. And later, of course, they imported my people and enslaved them and treated them as subhuman. I get around that emotion and look at the brilliance of people from 13 unconnected colonies coming together, putting together one of the greatest documents in the history of the world. But what made it great, and this is a key distinction from the French Revolution, the American Revolution and the American Constitution later, okay? Really the Constitution. was based on the premise that, again, they didn't follow it. And we can talk about that, but that's not the point of what I'm saying now. The American Revolution, the Constitution rather, was based on the notion that every man, and they meant white men, but later it was amended to mean everyone, and it's a really true statement, that inalienable rights come not from the crown, not from the sovereign, not from the king, not from the monarch, nor do they come from the church. They don't come from the bishop. They don't come from the pope. Inalienable rights come from God. Each human being has rights that are inalienable, and they come from God. That's key. That's an enduring formula. That's a successful observation, which will ensure that your nation will survive. And that's why in 248 years, America has become the greatest country in the world. It's the country that people by the hundreds, thousands, and millions flock to because they know here they can have a better life. Now, the French Revolution, it's a dangerous revolution. And I want to tell you that the Democrats and the left are taking on the characteristics of the French Revolution rather than the American Revolution. I saw a posting this morning where a man was driving a Tesla, and everywhere he went as he drove down the street, people were giving him the bird. And we've heard these stories about people defacing property of individuals who have Teslas, destroying Teslas on Tesla dealership lots. And some people celebrate that. I don't. I think it's anarchy. I think it's a lynch mob. Now, I don't have a Tesla. There's one right there. There's one right there. Speaking of the devil, look at that. Let me show you. There's one right there.
Estimated time and
Speaking of the devil,
11 minutes.
That's a Tesla right there. I just talked it up. But I don't have one. But if you were to survey how many Democrats in Congress have a Tesla, you'd be surprised. And that's because 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the Democrats, which I equate at this point to being a liberal mob, were telling everybody, you got to get an EV. If you don't get an EV and you still drive a fossil fuel vehicle, and you're part of the problem. You don't care about the climate change. You're a climate denier. You're a terrible person. You're this, you're that. It was great. And I know some Democrats that have Teslas, but I'm not going to blow them up this morning. But because he's a Republican now, he's the enemy, or he works with the Trump administration. And I'm not even dealing with the substance of that. What I'm talking about is the mob mentality that takes over Democrats, and that many of you, because I don't do it, you become victims of, you become followers of, you become enraged. Like, what difference does it make to you what car someone drives? All right? And what gives you the right if someone drives a particular vehicle? You don't have to buy that vehicle or support it. You can boycott it if you choose. That's legal. But what gives you the right to think you're so right that you can deface someone's property? What gives you the right to do that? And when you do that, you should go to jail. And you should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. It's the same with people who go to an abortion clinic. They're so compelled to believe that abortion is immoral and wrong that they feel like they're justified in blowing up an abortion clinic or killing an abortion doctor. That's usually more right-wing folks. But what I'm saying is the left is just as crazy. And both should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, because we should have no tolerance for political violence. Political violence is the worst kind of violence. And that's the kind of violence that drove the French Revolution. The difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution is that the American Revolution was based upon fighting the monarchy, casting off the monarchy, but governed by later a constitution and ideas that were centered on God-given rights. And when you recognize God-given rights, you also recognize God-given limits. And unfortunately, the French Revolution that was based on the principles of equality, brotherhood, which are noble principles, don't get me wrong. But there was no recognition of God. Indeed, they wanted to get rid of religion, almost like the Democrats. They want to get rid of religion. And they did get rid of Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. They murdered them. But it didn't stop there, because there were no godly principles behind the revolution. People like Maximilien Robespierre, these people were gods unto themselves. And eventually the French Revolution devolved into the terror or a bloodbath, when people were being denounced, murdered, killed. Same with the Russian Revolution. If you don't have God, faith, or the recognition that rights of human beings come from God, then that's an unsustainable revolution. And America is moving toward, particularly on the left, the right is moving toward a more intolerant view of the world, and I get that. Trump's problem is that when you have people like Tom Homan around you, he may be a good border czar, but he's not a good politician. He runs his mouth too much. And the thing that Holman and Elon Musk have to understand is that nobody elected you to anything. So if Trump is an effective leader, he's going to rein those dogs in. Because if I'm the leader and I'm elected by people, let me have the problems with the public. You just carry out your orders and keep your damn mouth shut. And the right, the Republicans are sort of down that road. Tom Homan said the other day, we don't care what the judges say. That's a stupid statement. And of course, it's an illegal worldview. But you have to differentiate what the Trump administration did and what Tom Homan said, because Tom Homan was just running his mouth. But the left troubles me more. I have to be honest with you. I'm more troubled by what I see on the left, because what is happening on the left, Muskegon Tribune says January 6th, Trump let them out of jail. Yeah, he did. And I think that, I have my opinions about that. I'm sure some of those people were unjustly prosecuted. And some of them should have been in jail. But that's a decision he made. Again, that's an executive power that he has. Biden pardoned his corrupt son and brothers and sisters. I don't think he should have done that. But guess what? That's an executive power that he had. And so people have to understand, when you vote for the president of the United States, there are certain presidential powers. And, we can have opinions about it as citizens. We can write about it. We can raise hell about it. But then ultimately, we have to decide whether we're going to vote for these people again or not. But let's get back to this point, because I don't think enough Americans have spent any time differentiating between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And the French Revolution started out good, but because it became an exercise in groupthink, and because there was no sovereign lord to bind the people, there was no recognition of a higher power. The people took it upon themselves to establish ultimately the goals, the values, and in so doing, they tried to implement limits on the human being, limits of speech. Whenever you encounter people that want to tell you how to speak in Nazi Germany, if you did not give the Heil Hitler, you could be denounced. You could be turned in to the local Nazi authorities, and you would be subject to legal investigation, criminal investigation, disloyalty charges, and that's what the French Revolution did. You could no longer greet your fellow French citizen in what they considered the bourgeois greetings. You had to use the language of the revolution, citizen, comrade. Whenever you find people trying to control your speech, whenever somebody tells you, you see a cat 6'3", and in a dress, makeup, you have to refer to that person by their pronoun. Whenever you go to a meeting and they start out demanding that you do something that you wouldn't otherwise do, starting a meeting talking about a pronoun, you're moving toward the French Revolution. And that's some of the most dangerous limits on freedom that you can have in society. When people tell you how to think, no, Muskegon, Tribune, this is where you're wrong. This is where you're wrong. This is where you're wrong. And I challenge you again. I've been a black nationalist. I'm always going to be a nationalist. I believe in black people doing for self, coming together. My whole life is teaching black history. I love our struggle. I've been active in movements and advancing the cause of African Americans. I know I've taught the horrors of slavery. I've taught the horrors of discrimination. But in truth, I have to be able to differentiate that from founding document, which was a revolutionary document never seen before in the history of man, the U.S. Constitution. And I challenge you, see, if you say America was not rooted in God, then you're wrong. Because the framers of the Constitution, that was the key principle that differentiates the American Revolution from the French Revolution. That for all of their wrong, and they were slave owners, they raped slaves, they sold human beings, they were not men without spot or blemish, to say the least. But you have to give credit where credit is due. And the enduring document that they were able to craft, and the process of government, the checks and balances, the three branches, it's what successive generations of citizens have used in order to demand from that document what we were denied in the beginning. That's all the civil rights movement was. It was an appeal. In other words, the document is great, but you left me out. You denied me the things that you said in the very document. I too am created in the image and likeness of God. My rights also are inalienable and come from a sovereign creator. So we can debate that. I've studied this for a very long time. And what I will say is that the Democrats and progressives in general, and we have a lot of black people that don't even know that through the progressive movement of the 60s, you internalized a lot of the French Revolution, a lot of the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution. And whenever you have the impulse to hurt somebody because they don't agree with you, or silence somebody, or reject somebody, or because they don't say what you want them to say, those are impulses from those darker revolutions, which, mind you, devolved into a lot. You know, in France, they didn't agree with the outcome. January 6th didn't agree with the outcome. No, they didn't. They didn't agree with the outcome. And again, there are two sides of that debate. Some will say that they tried to overturn the results. Some will say they were merely exercising their right to protest. The facts remain that, that's another issue, and I don't want to get off on that. People didn't die. There only one person died on January 6th. Okay, police did get roughed up. I will concede that, but it's a lie to say that people died on January 6th. Only one person died on January 6th, and that was a protester who was shot in the face. I don't know if it was in the face, but she was shot by a Capitol officer. Okay, and that's liberal and Democratic propaganda. Okay, if you do an analysis, only one person died on January 6th. Okay, and see, that's what I'm talking about. January 6th as an issue is over. It's done. The Democrats talked about that for 4 years. Yeah, a person died. I mean, I'm not. If one person dies, that's bad. But I'm just saying, let's be factual. See, this is what my problem with us is, that we try to, in order to build a case, we're not factual. And that's what the Democrats did. For 4 years, they said people died, cops died, hundreds of people died. But the American people deciphered and they said no. And listen, I say to black people who, in my view, become very hypocritical about January 6th. In 1992, when LA went woke, I wasn't upset. I'm gonna be very honest with you. Rodney King had been exonerated, was a clear violation of the law. They found they shopped for a jury in a lily white area. A young lady had been shot in the head by a Korean store owner, child, Latasha Harkin. Killed her over a juice, and it was on tape. So when LA burned up in 1992, I wouldn't have been out there burning it up, but I understood. I sat back and said, when you deny people rights, they will stand up. So I can't be a hypocrite. I can't be a hypocrite and act as though in substance, January 6th is really that much difference. It's not that much difference than what happened when George Floyd was murdered and young people took to the streets. That's just a part of an American tradition that when people get upset, I guess white folks are just more courageous, crazy, because where brothers would tear up the hood and the community, I have not known any brothers to go down to the Capitol, tear it up. young people pretty much start tearing up all over the town. I mean, during George Floyd, they went to Soho and all of these places, but these white folks went to the Capitol and did what they did. I'm not being soft on the right. I'm not being soft on them because they are what they are. But again, my analysis is mostly on the Democrats because that's where black people are. 90+ % of our vote goes to the Democrats. So it's like, just because I don't talk about house across the street where all this dysfunction is going on, and usually when I talk about my own house and what my kids and wife are doing, it doesn't mean I am in agreement with the dysfunction that's going on down the street. But I'm not a Republican. I'm not in that party. So if I was in that party, my analysis would be on them. You understand? So this is the most frustrating thing to a free thinker, is that when you speak into this political environment, people are constantly wondering or want to say, you're supporting the right. No, I'm simply talking most about the party that my people are enslaved to. If I saw a large number of blacks that were enslaved to Republicans and loved Trump and were deifying him and were bowing down at the altar of Trump, and I saw my people as over there and captive of that, I would rip it to shreds. But that's not what I see. My people seem to have a very skeptical view of Trump. In fact, most blacks I talk to hate Trump. So why would I waste my time? I'd just be one more person. Everybody I talk to, I got into a conversation with a guy the other day. On the internet, everywhere you go, black people have some anecdote about how bad Trump is. I don't follow trends. I don't need to contribute to that conversation. Tune in Roland Martin if that's what you want to hear, okay? Brother Conrad, we know you as Minister Conrad. Well, see, no, you don't, because I keep telling people I was never in the Black Panthers. I am not a leftist. You have never heard me talk about overthrowing the United States government. You have never heard me talk about any of the stuff that left-wing people talk about. So people do not understand the difference between members of the Nation of Islam, cultural nationalists, revolutionary nationalists, and the left. I've never been a part of the left. I've always believed in God, family, country, okay? That's important to me. Order, societal cohesion, okay? These are my values, and they have not changed. They have not changed, okay? But I must be honest, because I know a lot more about the world than I knew when you knew me, Conrad. I was in my 20s and 30s. Okay? But what I'm saying is black people are enslaved to the Democratic Party. So that's where most of my analysis comes from. Okay? And if there is any leverage or if there's any change that's going to take place. Now, I have said 30% of blacks, depending on where they live, they need to get into the Republican Party and advocate. I'm a Democrat. So I talked about the things Democrats need to do. And one of the things that they need to do is stop running people like me, and I imagine some of you, away by these groupthink, by telling people that they have to accept what their eyes, their intellect, and their common sense tell them that doesn't make sense, okay? And until the Democrats stop that, okay? Until the Democrats, and see, I challenge you, Muskegon. What do you know about the French Revolution? I want you to check it out. Check out the terror. Check it out. Check out how extremist people always end up turning on each other. because extreme irrational ideas have no limit. That's why Chuck Schumer now is being eaten up by the party. And that's what happened in the French Revolution. People were afraid to say, this doesn't make sense. Because once the groupthink sets in, you can't even analyze. You can't deviate. You can't depart. And so I'm a strong man. I resist, and I will never, ever accept groupthink. I will never accept that. I will never say, I'm not afraid to analyze, okay? Brother, I'm very knowledgeable of the world history, but people on the streets could care less. And that's the fault of people on the street. That's why the man on the street will always be manipulated. And I believe that we've had black folk scholars and leaders who woke the man on the street up. Malcolm gave the man on the street a PhD education. All right? So Dr. Ben, John Henry Clark, I don't accept that the state of the man on the street is that he has to continue to be ignorant and goaded into and to be used as a tool by the white left. I don't believe that. And that's what my life commitment is, to educate, to wake people up, to help people understand the things they don't want to understand. I'm not going to waste my time by talking bad about Trump. You got Negroes doing that on every station, on YouTube, every podcast, terrestrial radio. I wouldn't even waste my time with that. I'm going after your gods. I'm going after the places where few fear to tread. And I'm telling you that your greatest enemy right now is your inability. I'm not talking about you, Brother Muskegon. I love you and respect you. I'm talking about black people. We don't think. We're emotional. We get goaded into these things by Democrats and people who have their own vested interests. Chuck Schumer didn't do anything that was really wrong. He did what he had to do. He's a seasoned legislator. How come when the Democrats are in power and you get some kooks on the right that say we need a shutdown, Democrats say that's the worst thing in the world, a government shutdown. Why the soldiers won't get paid? Why we can't do that to the military? See, I'm just too discerning to let somebody run something on me. And I remember 2 years ago, they said the exact opposite. So Chuck Schumer actually did something that was pretty smart and courageous. But in this environment, when you don't do groupthink, you get in trouble. Chuck Schumer actually knew that if you shut the government down, you give Trump essentially maximum power to decide what's an essential service and what isn't. And if you think they're cutting through Doge now, if you have a government shut down, that gives the party in power the full power to mete out what's essential and what's not. And you can't even go to court to deal with that situation. And so that's why the party in power and even many of those in the opposition party are reluctant to have a government shutdown, because that actually would have empowered. And I agree. And Muskegon, you are right. Both parties are full of it. And that's why I want you gotta trust me that I'm not saying to you that either party is without spot or blemish. And that's the first Conrad Tillett Politics 101. Be skeptical of both parties. Know that both parties are not moral entities. I'm a pastor. And that's why I keep telling people, stop looking at political institutions as churches. They're not the same. Churches have their own problems, but at least the goal of a church is to be moral. Politics is not moral, it's not immoral. It can be immoral and it can be moral, but it's generally amoral. It's the politics of expediency. It's the process of compromise. It's the process of building and acquiring and utilizing power. And so I guess I'm just trying to, we're not, we are not hearing you critique the right. Well, what more can I say about the right? I mean, what is it, Ray? Tell me an issue that you want me to discuss on the right. Again, I don't find that necessary because I don't see a critical mass of blacks that are enslaved to the right. But for the sake of discussion's sake, what is the most objectionable thing the right has done? And I'll comment on it. Tell me what you think. Yeah, you're right. I don't criticize the right a lot. I tell my friends, excuse me, I tell my friends, my colleagues, I remind them I live in New York City. I don't see any right-wing people. Okay, that's what you have to understand. I don't see any Ku Klux Klan. I don't see people with Confederate flags. I don't see any people who would consider themselves to be right-wing. In my daily existence, in my political involvement, in my moving around, I'm not inundated with those kind of people. So that's not where my analysis is. I see mostly progressives, white liberals, who are doing the same thing as those people in terms of trying to keep all the power. Okay, well, what I'm saying to you is name an issue. And I'm trying to help you to understand, in the political environment that I live in, my tormentor is the liberal, is the progressive. I don't encounter what I'm try to appreciate my reality. There are no people claiming to be white supremacists in New York City. Okay? So I can't, I mean, I don't talk about those things because those are not the things that I encounter. And I know that some of you who live in red states or purple states or big states where the politics is largely defined by Republican politicians that have done certain things, I understand why you're so sensitive to that. So you're speaking from a New York perspective, not to all black people. Well, put it this way. Malcolm X said to Dr. King and to the nation, my whole life has been in the North. He said, I don't talk about the South. He said, for me, anytime you're south of the Canadian border, you're in the South. Dr. King talked about the Southern white man, but trusted the white liberal. Malcolm, on the other hand, didn't really spend a whole lot of time talking about the Southern white man. Some say met with the Ku Klux Klan, but he was merciless on the white liberal. And so I guess it's just a matter of what frustrates you, what you deal with, what you struggle with. And again, just give me an issue. Give me an issue. Like I said, what issue are you referring to? You say you see Confederate flags, McCree? I don't see them. I know you do now. I know you left New York City. I understand that. No, I see people with, every pin, rainbow, joy, love, peace, tattoos, but yet they move into my neighborhood and kick black folks out and will say to you in an instance, I don't have a racist bone in my body. I love marginalized people. That's what I deal with every day, okay? Left-wing politicians that call themselves socialists and pass legislation that disempowers blacks and runs black people out of New York. That's my focus. I live in a city that almost, at least Manhattan, and most of the city went for Trump, went against Trump. Now there's some areas in Brooklyn and Queens, Staten Island that he won. But so again, it's just a matter of I guess, what you're fighting for. And, I tell my brother's a minister in Atlanta. We often have uh, different perspectives because his perspective is different. He's dealing with things differently. And we can all join together because everybody's analysis is important. Muskegon, you still didn't give me an issue. Give me an issue. I'm inviting the conversation. Uh, but until you do, I would just say, I really want you to study the French Revolution because that's what the Democrats have sort of devolved into. They're following that model. And what I meant to say earlier is that the French developed what they call the national razor. And the national razor was the guillotine. And the guillotine started out, obviously, Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI were killed by the guillotine. And I've been to the spot where they were killed in Paris. And it started out as a place where the elites were killed. But because it was a godless revolution, because men and women, men largely, framed the revolution in a way in which they did not recognize a sovereign God that created each one of us individual and unique. Because they played God, the revolution devolved into what was known as the terror, when there was indiscriminate killing and violence. You see this in communist revolutions. Stalin killed more people than Hitler. Pol Pot killed more people than Hitler. And so when you see the left in our society, they are more influenced. See, I didn't always know this. And there are a lot of you that don't know this. You think when you talk about the Panthers and groups like that, you think these were black groups. You think that they were motivated, taught, and operating from a black perspective. They weren't. They were operating from a Marxist-Leninist perspective. They were operating from a left perspective. And this is what's taken over the Democratic Party. And that's why if you go against the orthodoxy in that party, you are sat upon by the group. Like right now, they're going to go after Chuck Schumer. Now, it will be interesting whether this old white man, white Jewish man, has the strength to withstand, and will they go after him as strongly with all of his political alliances? But they're going to try. AOC and others are going to lead the charge. Why? Because in that kind of revolution, and from the left's perspective, you cannot have free thinking. You can't be an independent thinker. You can't be a critical thinker. I watched this in seminary. One of the seminaries I attended was Union Theological Seminary. This is the most extreme left-wing seminary in the world. James Cone taught there for 40 years and many other great professors, Gary Dorian. But the culture of the school was you can be very critical of normative things in society, but you can't criticize us. They tried to run a Baptist brother out because he challenged some of the orthodoxy. I've seen in hip hop, which also influenced by the left. Okay, people like Russell Simmons. You can criticize the black church. You can criticize the middle class in hip hop. You can criticize the institutions that we rely on, but you couldn't criticize hip hop. Oh no, then you would become the victim of an onslaught. I've lived through all of this. And what I'm trying to tell you is that that's actually more dangerous than the right. I'm telling you. Listen, now Muskegon, you haven't given me an issue. And you say I'm more critical of the left. Anybody who's listening, throw out an issue that you want me to criticize from the right. I'll be glad to address it. But that left, it's dangerous. And if you don't have a moderating influence in the Democratic Party, if you run all the moderates out, if you run all of the common sense people out, then the Democrat Party will take on the features of the French Revolution. And you will be roundly eviscerated if you think differently. No matter what you say about America, Muskegon, let me give you why I have grown to understand the Constitution, the American Revolution, to be the greatest revolution. In America today, if you stand up and curse Donald Trump bitterly, you're free to do that. In America today, if you say you want to put on a black hat, have long curls, and have your woman with wigs and dress a certain way, and you want to put your children in certain schools, and you buy up a certain neighborhood, and we want to live in peace, you can do that. In America today, if you say you want to be a black Muslim, and you want to follow a man named Minister Louis Farrakhan, and you want to teach the white man is the devil, you want to teach your teachings and eat your way and structure your life the way you can do that. In America, if you say you want to be a Black Panther, you are able to do that. If you want to make a rap song and say whatever you want to say, you can do that. And that's the part that I'm not afraid to admit. Like when I was raised and growing up in the 70s, many of our teachers were blacks who had been born in the 40s. They came of age in the 60s. They were under the strong left-wing influences where I was taught as a child never to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I didn't stand for the flag and for the Pledge of Allegiance. And you could never say you were proud to be an American, okay? But I'm telling you, I've studied this. This is the freest country in the world. And because it is free, we have the right to do all these other things. And that's why I am not afraid today to say, you better check out that Constitution, because that Constitution made it possible for everybody you love who stood up and fought for black people. It was only possible through that Constitution. Can you hear me again? Muskegon, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I am well traveled, but I haven't traveled to every country in the world. But okay, but I've heard even Minister Louis Farrakhan say that America is the freest country in the world, and he's traveled everywhere. He's traveled everywhere, and many others who have traveled to every country. But no country on the earth has a constitution like the United States. Even in Europe, these Western democracies, that's why I tell people, stop following Europe. Don't tell me about what Europe is a backwater old world. Go to Europe. Look at the plumbing, the infrastructure. It is a backwater, the old world. But even in Europe, these so-called liberal Western democracies, you will go to jail for saying certain things. You don't have the unrestricted freedom of speech we have in this country. And that's valuable. You see, the fact that Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale could stand up, that Eldridge Cleaver could say F. Ronald Reagan when he was the governor of California and not be jailed. Now, there are certain things you can't do. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. And it's certainly not wise from my vantage point to stand up in any country and say you're going to lead an armed revolution. Brother, I am in the Midwest. We're not thinking about Europe. Yeah, but you're in the Midwest, but you need to think about the fact that you're in America and you have the freedom. You understand what I'm saying? You gotta. I'm almost finished, but you go anytime you want, but come back to that because this is important. See, no. Don't give me that oh humble pie. I'm in the Midwest. No, Midwest is significant. You're in Detroit, Michigan. That's the state that built this country. All right, that's the state that built this country. But let me tell you, if it weren't for that freedom of speech, freedom of association, and those principles are important. And so I'm going to give you some homework. All of the people that listen to this tape, get a book or watch a documentary on the French Revolution and the American Revolution. And then you'll understand why, as many criticisms as we have of this country, you will understand. Well, let me say this, Greg, you can, Muskegon, you can criticize Israel legally. Now, politically, you have some problems. Minister Louis Farrakhan has done that for 40 years, okay? No, I would disagree with you, okay? In Europe, if you criticize Israel, you go to jail. In America, you can criticize Israel. You absolutely can. Now, yes, there are political consequences. There are economic consequences, okay? But, hey, in a free society, if people want to boycott, protest, or in a free society, unfortunately, one of the features of our society is that our politicians tend to go with the money. But as I've always said, the Arabs have just as much money as the Jews. And if they want to play the game of American politics, then they have to do what others do. It's that simple, you know? It's that simple. Well, the laws are changing, you say. Well, I will always oppose changing laws to restrict freedom of speech. And I will tell you that that is one area where the right's hypocrisy is on full display. And that is that the right, which generally speaking, I find the right better advocates of free speech than the left, okay? Generally speaking. But when it comes to Israel, the right tends to punt on the issue of free speech when it comes to Israel. Okay, and I will certainly concede that. Okay? Yeah. No, I mean, look, unfortunately, Brother Muskegon, let me just say this to you. As Jesse Jackson so brilliantly taught me and us, we live in faith, but we live under the law. So there's no way around being involved in the political cesspool and process. But I think we stand a better chance of winning in the system or surviving, if that's all it is, when we disengage from the emotion and we have a surgical approach to it. Just understanding that it's a necessary evil, you know, because you know, politics being what it is, you can disengage, you can, as they used to say in the 60s, tune in, turn on, and cop out. But we live in faith, but we live under the law, okay? And that's not going to change. So, my brothers, I thank you for listening today. I hope you will truly understand me. I am not advocating for the right. I'm not advocating for the Republicans or the Democrats. I am more suspicious of the left because, again, that's who I deal with most often. And, you know, I deal with the left in my area. So I'm a lot more suspicious of them than I am the right. But I'm simply advocating for black people to be the smartest, the most mentally and intellectually agile, and that we become masters of this game and of this system so that we can at least get out of it what the system has to offer us. And, it makes me have to say things sometimes that are unpopular. And sometimes I find often people misinterpret my views. Say, you're standing for the right. I'm not. Why would I do that? What in my life experience would make me want to do that? So give me a chance, and please listen to what I'm saying. Just get a small book, okay? Thank you. I'm finished. But get a small book, or I tell you what, sit down and watch a documentary. Look at the Russian Revolution, look at the French Revolution, and look at the American Revolution. All right. For future reference, I want to know what we should expect from the system. Okay, got it. Thank you. God bless. Have a great day. Peace.